He said you expect most of these coaches that are younger to be more personable, more reliable with their players. And in most cases, it just doesn't work out that way. He also noted that after Stefanski earned Coach of the Year honors and the team reached the playoffs, the connection between the players and the head coach began to fade, Joe. It began to fade, Joe. Did you ever play with Jarvis? You didn't play with him, did you?
No, I didn't. I talk to Jarvis all the time. He hit me up yesterday. So he trying to get me on. I'm going to go out to Miami and get on this pod.
For a long time, the story around Kevin Stefanski felt simple. He was the steady presence in Cleveland, the coach who brought structure to a franchise that had spent years searching for it. On the surface, everything made sense. But now, that narrative is starting to crack. And it didn't come from analysts or headlines. It came from inside. Jarvis Landry, someone who was part of that system, recently spoke about his time in Cleveland, and the tone wasn't what you would expect from a player reflecting on a stable, well-run environment. It wasn't just frustration. It sounded like something unresolved, something that never quite sat right. That's what makes these comments different. Players speak out all the time, but when the tone shifts from criticism to something more personal, it changes how people listen. Landry didn't just question results. He hinted at deeper issues, moments behind the scenes that fans never fully saw. And once that door opens, the conversation changes instantly. Because now, it's not just about wins and losses. It's about what was really happening inside the building. It's about whether the public image of stability matched the reality players experienced every day.
I know when I was there for 100% fact, when we were struggling as an offense, I know Kevin Stefanski himself gave up play calling to AVP. The same thing that he's done, that we have guys that have told us that he's done throughout the years of not being able to get it done as a play caller and then putting it off on somebody else. Then the team gets success and then he takes over play calling again. I don't know how much history he's going to have as a head coach. But again, with this record, only thing he really got going for him is those two-time.
What makes this even more interesting is the timing. These comments aren't coming out during the season or right after a loss. They're coming later, when there's no immediate pressure, which often makes them more honest, more reflective. And that raises a bigger question. Why now? When former players start revisiting their experiences like this, it usually means the story wasn't fully told the first time. It means there are details that didn't make it into press conferences or post-game interviews. So suddenly, Kevin Stefanski isn't just being evaluated as a coach based on his record. He's being evaluated based on how players felt under his leadership. And that's a much harder conversation to control. Because once players start speaking, the narrative doesn't belong to the team anymore.
I don't love the idea that these guys have all been sitting on any of these takes for as long as they have. And now that Kevin's been fired and obviously subsequently hired somewhere else, now I gotta tell you the truth on how it was. It was like, all right, that feels a little opportunistic.
Well,
at the same point,
is it because, like, for Jarvis, for instance, though, like if Jarvis says all sorts of nasty things about Stefanski while he's still the head coach of the Browns, there's probably a lot of people in the Browns building that he likes, respects, etc., that'll probably get pretty upset by that.
If you only look at the surface, Kevin Stefanski checks all the boxes of a successful head coach. He has awards, including Coach of the Year recognition, and he brought a level of organization to the Cleveland Browns that had been missing for years. Compared to the constant instability before him, Stefanski looked like the answer. That's the version most people know. A smart, system-driven coach who understands how to structure an offense, manage a game, and bring consistency to a franchise that desperately needed it. And for a while, that image held strong. The Browns were competitive. They had direction. Things felt different. But success in the NFL isn't always as straightforward as it looks, because what happens on the field is only part of the story. What happens inside the building, in meetings, in decision-making, and in relationships between coaches and players often tells a completely different version.
When Jarvis Landry was talking about how he feels about Stefanski, the relationship just isn't the same. He just feels Jarvis don't got no reason to lie. He's gonna be honest, and that's the one thing you're gonna get from him. He's not gonna just bash nobody or say nothing for no reason. He's not gonna make something up to get people to say no. It's just talking honest, and that's when things just people like. Why would you say? I'm not gonna sit there and talk about my coach's relationship while I'm on the team. This is in real time happening. No, like I'm a professional. I'm gonna keep it as professional as possible while I'm playing. Like, why would you say this stuff now? Like for people that say that.
And that's where the questions start to appear. When players like Jarvis Landry begin to speak in a way that suggests frustration or disconnect, it challenges that clean, polished image. It introduces doubt, not necessarily about whether Stefanski can coach, but about how much control he actually had and how his leadership was experienced by the people around him. This is where reputation and reality can separate. A coach can appear successful externally while still facing internal challenges that don't show up in records or awards. And those internal dynamics can shape everything, from player performance to locker room culture. The Browns' inconsistency during that period adds another layer to this conversation. There were moments where the team looked sharp and well prepared, and others where things seemed disconnected. When a team swings like that, it often points to something deeper than just talent or execution. So now, the question becomes more complex. Was Stefanski truly the steady leader he appeared to be, or was that image supported by factors that aren't fully visible from the outside? Because once that question enters the conversation, every past success starts to be re-examined. If there's one part of this story that changes everything, it's the conversation around play calling. Because in the NFL, play calling isn't just a detail. It's one of the clearest indicators of who is actually in control of an offense. And this is where things start to get complicated for Kevin Stefanski. There have been suggestions, including from players and discussions around the team, that during certain periods, play-calling responsibilities may not have been entirely his. The name that comes up in that conversation is Alex Van Pelt, often referred to as AVP. If those claims are accurate, even partially, they introduce a completely different perspective on how the Browns' offense was being run. Because if the head coach isn't consistently calling plays, then what exactly is his role in shaping the offense? That question matters more than it seems. A head coach can delegate responsibilities, that's normal in the NFL. But when delegation becomes unclear or inconsistent, it can create confusion both inside the team and outside it. Players need to know who is making decisions. Systems need clarity to function effectively. And when that clarity isn't there, it can lead to exactly the kind of inconsistency the Browns experienced.
But I don't think he really said that with his chest. And how in the world could that have possibly happened and no one in the media ever found out?
That's crazy because Jarvis Landry, I've never known Jarvis Landry to be a hot take artist.
He's not.
He looks like he was the dude in Hard Knocks that was coming around telling people, hey, listen, we're going to be playing hard. Earl called me. He called me and said, G. Bush, did you see this? I said, I didn't see it, bro. He called me on the way home. I was going away from dinner. I said, yeah, I thought he gave it up to Alex Van Pelt. You know, he gave it. He said, no.
This is why the play-calling discussion is such a turning point in the narrative. It shifts the focus from general leadership to specific responsibility. It forces people to ask not just whether Stefanski was a good coach, but how much direct influence he actually had on the team's most important unit. It also changes how past performances are interpreted. Success might not fully belong to him. Struggles might not fully be his fault. But the lack of clear ownership becomes its own issue. And that's where the tension builds. Because in a league where roles and accountability are everything, uncertainty at that level can affect the entire structure of a team. So now, the question isn't just about whether the Browns' offense worked, it's about who was really running it.
Here's the thing, Joe.
Yes.
You and I both know that no one is going to tell the whole and complete truth about what's going on at an organization while they're there.
Yes.
And most guys won't even tell after they're done, depending on how unpopular.
Yes.
Okay. And a lot of organizations go along with the popular narrative as long as it doesn't make the organization look bad, because it's just easier.
Once you move past the surface and start connecting the dots, A pattern begins to form. The comments from Jarvis Landry don't feel isolated anymore. They feel like part of something larger, something that may have been building inside the Browns' locker room for a while. Because frustration in the NFL rarely appears overnight. It builds slowly, through small moments, unclear communication, and decisions that don't fully make sense to the players involved. And when those moments start to add up, the impact shows not just in conversations, but in performance. During Stefanski's tenure, there were stretches where the Browns looked completely in sync. The offense moved smoothly, the team executed well, and everything aligned with the image of a well-coached unit. But there were also stretches where things felt off. Drives stalled, adjustments seemed late, and the overall rhythm just wasn't there. That inconsistency often points to something deeper than talent. It points to communication, trust, and alignment between players and coaching staff. And when a player like Landry speaks in a way that suggests something wasn't right, it adds weight to that idea.
Totally fair.
So it's like open season now that he's away from the Browns, not the Browns head coach anymore, and it seems more like the Browns are moving off of Stefanski, even like in a positive way.
So I don't love that this feels a little opportunistic. I do think, listen, I don't care, you don't care. I think if this is Jarvis trying to showcase he can be part of the media, I think you do have to put the terms and conditions here. I think you need to put when this happened.
What makes this even more significant is Landry's role during his time in Cleveland. He wasn't just another player. He was a leader, someone deeply involved in the culture of the team. When a player in that position reflects with a tone of dissatisfaction, it suggests that the issue may have been felt across the locker room, not just individually. This doesn't automatically mean Stefanski lost the locker room, but it does raise the possibility that the connection between coaching and players wasn't as strong as it needed to be. And in the NFL, that connection is everything. Because no matter how good a system looks on paper, it only works if players fully believe in it. And if that belief starts to fade, even slightly, the effects can show up in ways that aren't always obvious at first, but become impossible to ignore over time. It would be easy to look at all of this and treat it as something that belongs entirely in the past. A former player speaking about a previous situation, a debate about decisions that have already been made. But the reality is this conversation still matters right now, because Kevin Stefanski is still part of the league, still shaping teams, still influencing players. And when questions like this start to surface, they don't just stay tied to one moment. They follow a coach wherever he goes. This is especially important in today's NFL, where the margin between success and failure is incredibly small. Teams aren't just looking for coaches who understand schemes. They're looking for leaders who can manage personalities, communicate clearly, and create environments where players can perform at their best. If there were issues with clarity, control, or trust in Cleveland, those are things that can carry over if they aren't addressed. And once a narrative like this starts to form, every future decision gets viewed through that lens. Every play call, every adjustment, every interaction becomes part of a larger evaluation. This also matters because of the players involved. Quarterbacks, especially, depend heavily on coaching structure. Their development, their confidence, and their performance are all tied to how well the system around them functions. If there are lingering questions about how that system is run, it becomes a concern not just for fans, but for the organization itself.
This was right at the start, so I listened to the first, and that edit is clean. Like that's
Okay.
Nothing was taken out of context with that. So I just would like to know when, like if he was there, when, what year, what weeks did this happen? Because do you ever recall Kevin not having the Denny's menu?
He always had
He
it.
always
always
had
had
it
the menu.
until he gave up the play calling, and then he didn't have it. The only thing that it was my understanding at one point, Alex would script the first handful of plays coming out of the half when the Browns got the ball first. That's the only, and I had kind of heard that a couple years ago, that when you're coming out of when you're going to the half, you're coming out of the half, there's just a lot going on. And when you're getting the ball, it's helpful to have the first few plays scripted.
This is why the timing of these discussions is so important. They're happening as new situations are forming, as teams are making decisions about their future, and players are stepping into roles that will define their careers. So while the comments may be about the past, the implications are very much about the present. reputation in the NFL never stays fixed, and now Kevin Stefanski is being reevaluated. Was he truly as effective as his image suggests, or was his role misunderstood? On one side, he brought structure, success, and recognition to a struggling franchise. On the other, new concerns about play calling, locker room connection, and internal stability raise real questions. The truth likely sits somewhere in between, because coaching isn't only about results, it's about leadership and control. And as more voices speak, one thing is clear: Stefanski's story isn't finished, and this debate is only getting started.